Because it seems to me like when that happened, it must have been a wake-up call to a lot of people. Like, you know, your signs, your protests, if you step too far over the line, guess what? We just kill your guy. You know, we just take people out. That's how we roll. But it's just a hell of a time. And it's just amazing to hear you talk about all this and talk about knowing people like Carmichael, just because to me that you all weren't in history, you were making it. Talk about bleeding edge. You were...
Yeah, we're riding around in cars and we're like doing things. I mean, we're like, you know, buying guns with stolen credit cards and doing all kinds of crazy stuff, you know, which kind of put us on the radar anyway.
Yeah.
Because we were trying to get ready for it. And then, you know, there were certain people around us. I mean, there were nights when you would miss getting a ride with somebody and the next thing you know, that car would blow up. Yeah. And people were dead, and you go, damn, I could have been in that car.
Right.
But then it also kind of steeled you in another kind of way because it was basically the same thing that was going on in South Africa, except, you know, they weren't owning up to it. The FBI never said, yeah, we did it.
Right.
You know, they would say those guys were making bombs and they had something in their car and they didn't do it right and it went off. And we'd say, that dude was, you know, totally frightened of, you know, he wouldn't touch a gun. He
Right.
definitely wouldn't have a Molotov cocktail or anything else in his car. So there's no way his car would blow up. But there's nobody you could tell that.
Right.
Or who were you going to tell? And what were you going to say that you knew about it? So if you knew about it, then you're a part of it, and then we're going to arrest you, we're going to do this. So there were all kinds of things going on. That was essentially almost like apartheid in a certain kind of way, but they were just a lot more surreptitious about it.
Right. Back during the Vietnam War, you'd see everybody protesting, well, those who were inclined. You know, students just get up off their ass and get civically busy.
Yeah.
These days, not so much. I think...
Because there's no draft.
I'm glad you said it so I didn't have to. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, what do you think about what's going on now and what young people are doing and not doing? Does it make you angry? I mean, you come from being very civically motivated to where you put your life on the line so others could be free. I mean, that's pretty heavy stuff. I'm sure you're having a great time while doing it, but it was part of a much bigger picture that you were striving for. These days, I think civil rights, freedom of expression, freedom of speech is under great attack, and students don't seem to be all that angry about it.
Well, because, I mean, there's no threat to their quality of life. Yeah. You know, in terms of who they are, where they are, and what and how it particularly affects them. I guess for us, because there was a draft, and if you didn't do well in school or if you were from a certain economic strata, you were going into the Army and you were going to be used, which is pretty much what's happening now. I mean, the kids that volunteered so that they could get, you know, use of the GI Bill and go to college and buy a house or take care of their families or do whatever. And most of them probably never expected, you know, they were weekend warriors. Yeah. They never expected to have to go and do anything. Now they're stuck in this place getting blown up every day. And, you know, we're worried about whether Paris Hilton goes home on the weekend. You know, it's like, how many people died that day when we wasted all that news time on that, you know? And anything to keep the war off the front page. Yeah. So when we talk about it now, or look at who's dying, it's nobody of any consequence to the kids who are watching it. Somebody might know a kid they went to high school with, you know, if they're in college or if they have a job now or they're working. But the only people who are really affected by it are the people who stayed at home or the people who didn't have the opportunity to go to a place of higher learning or who aren't out there striving to become affluent in another way or fighting to make a dollar because they understand that the gap between the haves and have-nots is getting greater and greater and greater. Because there used to be a middle class.
Yeah.
I used to kind of think I was lower middle class, you know, when I was growing up, but at least we were kind of middle class. Now there is no real middle class when you think about it. Yeah. So the people who are dying are, you know, people who don't have a voice anyway. They can complain about their kids, they can cry about their kids dying, but they don't really have a voice that the politicians care about or that the kids who are going to run the world in the next generation know or touch or came into contact with. So it's a very different kind of world out there. just because there's no consequence.
Well, I very much appreciate that you said that, and I am a big fan of your work, but I greatly admire this life that you have outside of the film, just as an activist and someone, you know, who's seen it, done it, and is part of, I think, you know, good, positive, forward-moving change.
Thank you.
And thanks for being on the show.
My pleasure.
Right on.
Yeah.